Hello friends, welcome, good morning. In today's lecture, we'll be discussing class 10 economics topic, that is money and credit. It is a very important topic for all of us, and in this lecture, we'll be also discussing many questions and answers, and that too it's going to be very important for your upcoming boards examinations for the 2021. Clear? So let's start the class for today. See, first of all, we have to understand the meaning of money. Clear? What is the meaning of money? So on this slide, there is you can say a very nice definition of what is money. So let's understand it. See, first of all, under point A, we can see money is anything that serves as a medium of exchange. Clear? Now, what is money? Anything which serves as a medium of exchange. And what is the meaning of medium of exchange? Medium of exchange means through which you can purchase certain goods or avail certain services. Clear? If you want to buy a certain product, you can buy that product, get that product in exchange for money. Clear? You can say it can also be vice versa. If you want to sell something, you give a product and you take money in exchange. Clear? So what is money? Money is a medium of exchange. Clear? Under point B, money is unit of account. Clear? Now this is a very important point, and we'll see why it is important, because before money came into our lives, clear? Before money came into our lives, what was there? There was the barter system. Clear? And what was barter system? We'll again discuss it in the next slides. Clear? But right now, please try to understand that money is also serving as a unit of account. Clear? Let us see what it says over here. A unit of account is something that can be used to value the goods and services. Clear? Like for example, I have got a bottle over here. Clear? Now, if I ask you, tell me what is the worth of this bottle, how will you tell me? Will you tell me that this bottle is worth, let's say, 2 pence or 4 pencils? Isn't it? So there is no proper unit over there. But when you when you value this bottle in terms of money, clear, it becomes a unit of account, isn't it? Clear? So a unit of account is something that can be used to value the goods and services, also to record the debts. Clear? If you have to pay somebody, if you have to pay back somebody some amount of money, so you can record the debts in the in form of money, because it is a unit of account, and also you can make calculations. Clear? In other words, it's a measurement for value. Clear? So please remember that money is a unit of account. Now under C, again very important feature over here, money acts as a store of value. Now when I say store of value means what? Like again, if I give you a very simple example, clear? Now if, let's say, if I have got lots and lots of grains, clear? Now if I store those grains, clear, I can use it to exchange with other goods. But again, the limitation is that I cannot store these grains, clear, for a longer period of time, isn't it? Because they will rot, they will spoil. Clear? So store of value has to be something which can last for you can say for a very long time. Clear? So money is acting as a store of value. Look at this point over here. A store of value is essentially an asset, commodity or currency that can be saved. You can save these things. Retrieved, it can be retrieved, you can use it. Clear? And exchanged in the future without deteriorating in value. Clear? Like for example, you can of course store gold. Clear? You can store the precious metals as a store of value. Clear? You can store a particular commodity if it can last that long, or you can even store currency. Clear? So currency is used as a store of value. Clear? In order for a commodity or some particular kind of an asset to enter this category of store of value, clear, the item should, clear, the item acquired should over time either be worth the same or more. Clear? Now what it means is that, like, if I want to use a particular commodity or use a particular asset as a store of value, now what is the basic criteria? The basic criteria is that its value should not, diminish over time. Clear? Its value should not diminish. It should either increase or at least remain the same. Isn't it clear? So as a store of value, money is used as a store of value. Clear? So remember these 3 points, point A, point B and point C. Clear? Once again, money is serving as the medium of exchange. It is used as a unit of account, and also it is a store of value. So this is very important. Let me tell you that this particular definition you might be asked in your examination, like what is money. So in that particular question you would have to include these 3 points. Clear? And explain them very very briefly. Clear? So let's move ahead. Now coming to the topic of evolution of money, how money, you can say money, how it came to be used in the world. Clear? So we can divide this evolution into 3 periods. Clear? The first is the ancient period. In the old days, in the ancient times, clear, cattle and grain were mainly used as money. Clear? During that time we had a system called the barter system. Barter system means what? It means whereby, for example, if I want to purchase some good, clear, so during that time I can purchase that good with the help of some other goods. Whatever goods I had, I could have exchanged my goods with that particular good. Clear? Like for example, again, if I give you a second example, like see, for example, this is in my hand I have got a mobile phone. Clear? Now if I want to buy, let's say for example, a calculator. Clear? Let's say a calculator. Clear? Now I have got this mobile with me. I want to sell this mobile. Clear? And I want to buy a calculator. Clear? So a person who is having a calculator, he also should be willing to purchase a mobile in the first place. Clear? So even if that, in the case like that person also wants to buy this mobile phone. Clear? And I want to purchase his calculator, so we exchange the goods. Clear? I give him the mobile phone and I get this calculator from him. Clear? So this is the exchange of, you can say, exchange system where goods were used. Okay? So this is the barter system that was there in the ancient times. Clear? And during that time mainly cattle and grain were used as money. To purchase certain goods you would have to purchase it with cattle or grains. Clear? Then came the medieval period. Clear? Now in this medieval period metallic coins were mainly used as money. Clear? The coins, they were mostly made of, you can say, precious metals like gold and silver. So they were used in the medieval period. Clear? And talking about the modern period, now we have got the currency, the paper currency and also the coins. But however, these coins are not made of precious metals. Clear? So we are using the paper currency and the coins in today's world as the you can say currencies. Clear? We have got more forms of money in modern times. We'll be discussing that in the next slides. Clear? So this is how the money has, you can say, evolved over time. This is the evolution of money. Now discussing about the barter system, the challenges of barter system. Now see, we have seen what was barter system. Clear? Where I give a certain good and then I purchase that good from him in exchange for the good which I had. Clear? Now there are certain challenges to this barter system. So let's see one by one what are these challenges. The first is double coincidence of wants. Now see, when we say double coincidence of want, it means what? Like for example, the same example which I gave you, let me just help you out with the example which I just gave you. Like for example, if I have this mobile phone, clear, and I want to purchase a calculator. Clear? Now let's say someone Mr. A is having the calculator, I am having this mobile phone, so I want to purchase the calculator. That is fine. But what if Mr. A doesn't want to buy this mobile phone? Clear? Only if Mr. A wants to buy a mobile phone as well and I want to purchase a calculator, only then we can bring about this transaction whereby I give him the mobile phone and then I take over this calculator from him. Clear? So what is the main demerit of this particular system is that there has to be a double coincidence of wants. Clear? So it is not, it is normally not possible for every other person to purchase or to take goods what you don't want. You'll only take goods what you want, isn't it clear? So this was the major flaw, major drawback or major challenge of the barter system. Now coming to the next challenge of barter system, there was no standard unit of account. Clear? Like again, if I give you an example, now if I have got this, let's say this is a, you can say, let's say again, let's put this as a mobile phone. Clear? Now again, this is a mobile phone. If I want to purchase, let's say a bottle, clear? I have got this bottle over here, and see bottle. I want to purchase a bottle, and the good which I have over here is a mobile phone. Clear? Now I don't know how many mobile phones are worth the bottle which I want to purchase. Clear? Is it less? Is it more? Or what is the worth? We don't know. Clear? So there is no standard unit of account. Clear? I don't know whether 1/4 of this mobile is equal to the cost of the bottle. Half the cost of half the mobile phone is worth the bottle which I want to purchase. So there is no standard unit of account. This is the you can say another major drawback of the barter system. Now the third important you can say demerit is that it is impossible to divide the goods. Clear? Now in the old days, what was there? Like for example, let's say Mr. A was there. Mr. A, clear? I'll give a very simple example. Let's say Mr. A has got one cow. Clear? Mr. A has got one cow and he wants to purchase 10 kg of grain. Clear? He wants to purchase 10 kg of grain. Now let's say 10 kg of grain equals to, I'll just give you an example, equals to 1/10 the value of a cow. Clear? 1/10 the value of a cow. 10 kilograms of grain equals to 1/10 the value of a cow. Now, how will this transaction take place? Can you cut the cow into let's say, just chop off the 1/10 part of a cow? Is that possible? Is that a sane thing to do? Of course not. Clear? So there is impossibility of division of goods. Clear? Next drawback, lack of information. Now what does this point say? This point says that, like for example, if I want to purchase a particular commodity, clear, and in exchange for what I have, clear. So first of all, I have to find somebody who wants to purchase what I have with me. Clear? So there is lack of information. We don't know who wants my product, who wants this particular thing. Clear? And the next side is that I also should be wanting to buy what the other person has got. Clear? So there was lack of information. Clear? Now with the invention of money, with the usage of money, all these challenges you can say have overcome. We have overcome all these challenges of the barter system, you can say, with the money that we used in today's time. Next drawback of the barter system was production of large and very costly goods not feasible. Clear? Now if somebody produces a large good or very costly good, clear, now the person will not be sure with whom I can exchange this good, because there will be very less buyers in the market. And the most important point, remember that if you produce a very large commodity or a good, clear, you have this good with you. Now the person who will purchase from you, whatever goods they have, you should be ready to take those goods from them in return for what you have produced. Simple example. Let's say, for example, I'll just give you a simple example. Let's say, I have manufactured, let's say, a house, a wooden house. Clear? I have manufactured a wooden house and I want to sell this house. Clear? Now, manufacturing a house is a big product. Clear? So you have built this wooden house and you want to sell this house. Clear? Now you want to sell this house in exchange for what? Let's say your demands are, you are wanting one elephant. Clear? One elephant, and then let's say 1 kg of gold. Clear? And 5 horses. Clear? So this is how you have this is the worth of your wooden house which you have made. So this is how you have kept the you can say price for it. Clear? Like whoever wants to purchase my house, they will have to give me 1 elephant, 1 kg gold, and 5 horses. Clear? Now see, now to get a buyer who can fulfill your demands, or you can say who has the same goods which you are wanting in exchange for a wooden house, it is very difficult. It is not feasible actually. Clear? So if you produce a very big product, you don't know who's going to purchase it, and moreover the person who wants to purchase it, do they have the sufficient, do they have the things that you need? Clear? So these are the, you can say, the major drawbacks or the challenges of the barter system. Clear? I hope you're understanding this. Again, this is the very important question. You may get a question in the examination as what are the major what were the major challenges of the barter system. Clear? So if you just write these 5 points and explain them briefly, you can score really good marks in your examination. Clear? Now moving ahead, there's a question over here. Why money is used as medium of exchange? Why do we use money as the medium of exchange? So see over here, we have already seen the reasons why actually. So to put this answer, since money acts as an intermediate in the exchange process, it is called a medium of exchange, isn't it? Very simple. Why is money used as medium of exchange? Because money is the intermediate, you can say, acting as the intermediary, or money acts as an intermediate in the exchange process. Clear? Like you want a certain good. Clear? So you pay in terms of money. Clear? That is the medium of exchange, and then you get the product or the good. Clear? So because money is acting as an intermediate in the exchange process, that is why we call it as a medium of exchange. Clear? You can see in this picture the barter system has been depicted. Clear? Where if you want to purchase these apples, clear? So for these few bananas, you can purchase these apples, and vice versa. If you want to purchase the bananas, for these few apples, you can purchase the bananas. Clear? So there has to be coincidence of want. There has to be a person who wants bananas, and there has to be a person who wants, you can say, the apples. Clear? So there has to be, you can say, this kind of a coincidence between two persons. Moving ahead, now over here we have the modern forms of money. Clear? What are the modern forms of money that we use in today's time? We have got the currency. Clear? The currency which we all use, isn't it? Then we have got the coins. Coins also are used. Then deposits with banks. Clear? Which are famously called as the demand deposits. We'll see exactly what is demand deposits in the next slide. Clear? Then checks. Then plastic money in the form of cards. Your debit cards, your credit cards, ATM cards. Then digital money. Digital money means in the forms of electronic money. Clear? Whereby you pay, you can say, to the persons in forms of digital money. Clear? Like for example, these days we are using the electronic wallets, isn't it? These are what? These are all digital money. Clear? Then a very new concept, cryptocurrency. Now see, cryptocurrency, in talking about India, in India it is, the things are not very clear. The government has also banned the you can say the use of cryptocurrency in India. But however, to understand this particular fact, to the concept clear, cryptocurrency means a kind of a virtual currency. Clear? Cryptocurrency means a kind of a virtual currency, and this currency is, you can say, it is in the form of certain complex codes. Clear? So it is working. If I have got certain cryptocurrencies, it is going to be in a very complex form of certain codes. Clear? So this is the cryptocurrency, and I'll be talking about cryptocurrencies in detail in a separate video lecture where I'll be dealing with this topic separately. Clear? Now moving ahead, the next topic is like, what is a check? Now if you get a question for a single mark, a short mark question, clear? Like what is a check? So please understand, a check is a paper instructing the bank to pay a specific amount of money from the person's bank account to the person in whose name the check has been issued. Clear? Now I request all the students to please try to understand what is check, and also try to learn the definition of a check, because again it is going to be very important for your examination. Clear? I'll be explaining you the the exact format of the check, how it is, what are the things inside written on a check, what it means, clear, how it is used. So I'll be explaining all these things to you in detail in the next slides. Clear? Now see, just to understand it briefly, what is a check? Now check is what we all must have seen. It's it's a kind of a paper in this rectangular form. Clear? A paper, it is a paper instructing the bank, clear, to pay a specific amount of money. So let's say, for example, I am having a bank account with State Bank of India. Now State Bank of India will give me a checkbook. Clear? Now with the help of that checkbook, clear, I can make payments to anybody I want. Clear? So in the checkbook, what will happen? I will have to write the person's name. Clear? Pay whom? Whatever the person's name is. Let's say Mr. X. Clear? So pay Mr. X, whatever is the amount. Let's say rupees 50,000. 50,000 is the amount. So I write the amount over there, and then I put my signature over there. Clear? So this is how the payments are made. Now what will happen? This Mr. X will take this check. Clear? He will go to his bank, deposit this check, and this amount of money will be credited in the account of Mr. X. Clear? I'll be explaining you this in details. Clear? Over here, just understand that it is a paper. What is a check? It is a paper instructing the bank to pay a specific amount of money from the person's account. Whose account? From my account, to the person in whose name the check has been issued. Clear? So in this case, it is Mr. X in whose name the check has been issued. So I am directing my bank, clear, to pay Mr. X the amount of rupees 50,000. Clear? So this is this is check all about. Clear? Moving ahead. Now let's see, this is the format of the check. Clear? We'll be understanding this in a great detail over here. See over here. Now all of you must have seen the check. It looks somewhat like this. Clear? This is the check of the of a bank, that is Canara Bank. Now see, you have got the format over here. This is the date format. Clear? So you have got in the format of DDMMYYYY. It means what? Date has to be written in the first two boxes, then month in the next two, and then these four boxes are for the year. Like let's say, for example, if it is 1st of January 2021, you write it as 01/01/2021. Clear? 1st of January 2021. So in this format, you will have to write down the date on the check. Clear? And then over here, you can see over here, it is written pay, P-A-Y. Clear? Like for example, if this check belongs to me, if I want to pay, let's say the payee's name is Rahul. Clear? So I will write over here simply pay Rahul Bajaj. Let's say his full name is Rahul Bajaj. Clear? So I will write over here pay Rahul Bajaj. Clear? And you can see over here is written in Hindi and English over here. Dharak ko or bearer. Okay. So in this case, you'll have to cross this. Okay, because I'll explain you the reason for it. Clear? So first of all, you put the payee's name over here. The payee is who? Rahul Bajaj in this case. Clear? Now let's say if I'm paying him 1 lakh rupees. So rupees 1 lakh only. Clear? This is written in words, and in the figures you have to write over here in this box over here rupees 1 lakh. So how do you write? You put 1 over here and then followed by 5 zeros and then closing it in this form, in this way. Clear? This is how 1 lakh has to be written over there. Clear? Now this is the account number. This is the account number, like there's going to be my account number, so I have to put down my account number over here, whatever is the account number. Clear? And then at last I have to put my signature over here. Clear? Now see, there are few things which you all have to understand. Clear? It's going to help you for your entire life. Please pay attention. See, first of all, whenever you write on a check leaflet, clear, this is a check leaflet, isn't it? So whenever you write on a check leaflet, first of all, make sure that you commit no mistake. Clear? You cannot afford to make any mistake, because if you make any mistake, that check will not be honored in the bank. Clear? the check will not be valid. So please be very very careful while writing on a check leaflet. Clear? So first of all, write the date on the check. Clear? Name of the person whom you want to pay, whatever reason may be. Clear? Then the amount in words and in figures. Clear? Whenever you write the amount in the figures, make sure that you don't leave any space over here. Clear? You start very close from this particular the space that is given for the amount to be written in figures. Clear? You don't leave any space over there. Clear? And then after the amount, just at last just put a slash in this way and then a hyphen in this way. Clear? Why it is so? Because see, if you leave spaces, if you leave spaces before you can say at this place or over here, what will happen? Someone may forge your check leaflet, isn't it? Someone may put certain numbers before or after and the value may be changed. Clear? So just to avoid those things, it is always advisable to start writing from this particular place. Clear? And after the figure has been written, you just close it in this way. Clear? And then you put your sign over here. Clear? And then there are a few things to understand over here. See, you can see over here, like this is the name of the bank wherever you're having your bank account. Clear? And then you have got the address of the bank. Clear? Now and then you have got over here the IFSC. Clear? Now what is IFSC? It is very, very important for all of us to understand what is IFSC. So please first of all try to know the full form of IFSC. IFSC, Indian Financial System Code. Clear? Now what is IFSC? I have put it over here for you to understand. It is an 11-digit alphanumeric code. Clear? So always remember that IFSC is 11-digit. Clear? Alphanumeric. Alphanumeric means what? There are alphabets as well as numbers in that code. Clear? Which is used to uniquely identify the bank branches within the National Electronic Funds Transfer Network by the central bank. Central bank means the Reserve Bank of India, the RBI. Clear? See, first of all, just to put it in simple words, what is IFSC? It is a code. Clear? It is an 11-digit alphanumeric code, which is a unique code that which is used to identify the branches where your account, where you hold an account with the bank. Clear? So whenever you make any kind of electronic payments through the National Electronic Funds Transfer. Clear? So IFSC has to be used. If you make a mistake in the IFSC, the funds may not be transferred properly. Clear? So that is the meaning of IFSC. So your IFSC is mentioned over here. Clear? Then coming at the bottom of the check leaflet, now you can see numbers over here. Now this is the number of the check. This is the check number. Clear? This is the check number. Like for example, if you have to maintain this particular transaction in your accounting records. Clear? So what happens over there, you will have to mention this check number. Clear? Along with the payee's name and the amount that you have paid him. This is used for the references. Clear? So always remember, if someone will ask you where is the check number mentioned, it is mentioned at the bottom of the check leaflet. This is the check number. Clear? Then over here also you have got few numbers. Now what is this? This is the MICR. Clear? Now what is MICR? You can just see over here. MICR, it stands for Magnetic Link Character Recognition Code. Clear? Now MICR is a 9-digit code. Clear? The 9-digit of MICR code indicates the bank and the branch from which the check is issued to the account holder. Clear? Now for example, now MICR code is whatever is the number over here, it is a 9-digit number. Now what it means over here is that this code, it means that which bank has issued the check. Clear? Which branch has issued the check. So it is used to identify the branch, the bank, clear, who has issued you this particular check. Clear? So that is the meaning of MICR. So over here you have got the MICR code. It is a 9-digit code. Clear? Now just to make you understand a few more things over here. See, whenever you issue a check, clear, like for example, if you don't write any name over here, if you don't write any name over here, if you just write the amount, clear, and if you just you can say just tick on bearer over here, clear, or you can simply write bearer also, clear. So in this way what will happen, whoever is having the check in his hand, clear, they can encash the check over the counter in any bank, clear. Like for example, if no name is mentioned over here, it is just mentioned as, you know, if just bearer is ticked over here, or if it is written over here as well. Now if anyone with this check leaflet goes to a bank, they will be getting the amount whatever is written on this check, clear. That is why for safety purposes, clear, even after the name is written, clear, people cross the check in this way, clear. They can write over here account payee as well. Now what does crossing the check mean? Crossing the check means that, like, you know, like if you cross the check, now if I have paid to Rahul Bajaj, now Mr. Rahul Bajaj can only encash the check, clear, not over the counter, but the same amount, that is rupees 1 lakh, will be credited in his bank account first. He will not be getting the amount in cash over the counter from a bank, clear. He will be getting the amount in his bank account, and from his bank account he may withdraw it later, clear. So this acts as a, you can say, as a safety step. It acts as a safety step so that the money is not, you can say, gone, money is not transferred to the wrong person, clear. That is why it is always advisable to cross the check in this way, clear. So this is the basic format of check and the basic details which I have shared with you, clear. And one very important point, please always remember that a check is having a validity period of only 3 months, clear. Please remember that. Like for example, the date which I have put on this check leaflet is 1st of January 2021. Now after 3 months, clear, that is after 31st of March 2021, if the person, that is if Mr. Rahul Bajaj goes to the bank, presents it to the bank, clear, now this check will be dishonored, okay? This check will be dishonored. Why dishonored? Because the check has, you can say, become invalid. Why so? Because a check is only valid for 90 days from the date that is mentioned on the check leaflet, clear. So always remember this particular fact, you know, whenever you issue a check, whenever you receive a check, always check on the date. What is the date mentioned? That plays a very important role, clear. And if you receive a check, don't forget to deposit it with your bank, you know, within 90 days from the date mentioned on the check leaflet, clear. So let's move ahead. Now coming to the next topic, like what is demand deposit? Let me explain to you this particular point in a very very easy manner. See, first of all, let's say there is a bank over here, clear. Now it is you are over here, clear. You have got certain money, clear. You have got certain money. Now what you do with this money? You have got excess money, you deposit it in the bank, clear. What you are doing? You are depositing your money in the bank, clear, because banks, of course, they accept deposits, isn't it? Now when you have deposited your money, clear, you can also withdraw it anytime by going to the bank, withdrawing it, you know, by using your ATM cards, your debit cards. You can withdraw the money from the bank, clear. So see what it means over your demand deposit, that whenever you demand money from the bank, whenever you demand your money from the bank, clear, the bank is liable to give you the money at that time only, clear. So this is known as demand deposit. Let's say for example, if you have deposited 1 lakh with a bank, clear. Now if you want to withdraw any amount from there, you can withdraw it anytime. This is simply called as demand deposit. That's all. Clear? Nothing technical about it. Clear? I hope you get that. Now moving ahead. Next, there's a question over here. Again, this is a very important question and I'm making it as important. Why are demand deposits considered as money? Clear? So why we consider the demand deposits as money? What are the reasons for it? isn't it? The very you can say the basic meaning is that you can withdraw it anytime and you can use that money to purchase goods, isn't it? So looking at the answer, demand deposits are considered as money because, first point, they can be withdrawn from the bank whenever it is required. Clear? So whenever you feel that you need money, you can simply go to the bank and withdraw it. You can go to the ATM and withdraw it. Clear? Second point is, they are widely accepted as a means of payment along with the currency, hence they are considered as money. Clear? It simply means that, you know, it has got high liquidity over here. It has got high liquidity. Clear? You can use this money to purchase goods and services. The next third point is, they are accepted widely as means of payment by way of a check instead of cash. Therefore, they are also considered as money in the modern economy. Clear? So we all have got money in the banks. Clear? If you want to, withdraw your money, you can simply go to a bank and through a check you can withdraw the money. Clear? See over here, they are accepted widely as means of payment by way of a check instead of cash. Therefore, they are also considered as money in the modern economy. Clear? So just remember over here, like, if someone will ask you why are demand deposits considered as money, because it can be withdrawn from the bank anytime and the same amount of money can be used for, you can say, can be used to purchase any kinds of goods and services. Clear? Therefore, it is considered as money. It is as good as money. Clear? Now moving ahead, debit card versus credit card. Again, a very important topic over here. Now, most of us, of course, many of you have used debit cards, credit cards. Clear? So what is the difference between these two? I'm going to bring out the very basic differences between these two. Clear? And it is very, very important for us to understand what is the difference between debit card and credit card. Clear? See, when you have got money in your bank account, clear? Let's say you have got some amount of money in your bank account, clear? Now this money can be withdrawn by you at any time you want. Clear? So you can withdraw it through modes of check. Clear? Or these days we have got the plastic currency in the form of debit cards. Clear? So the bank will issue you a debit card. In this is the format of a card. You can see it is written as credit card. In the same way you have got a debit card. Clear? Now this card can be swiped at the ATM machines. Clear? And you can withdraw the money. Clear? If it is a debit cum ATM card. Clear? Or else you can make the payments through debit cards, online transactions through the POS, point of sale, isn't it? So you can use the credit card to make various payments. Credit card also is used for the same purposes. You can make payments, for digital transactions, for online transactions. Clear? But the basic difference between debit card and credit card is that when you use a debit card, you are using your own money which is there in your bank account when you're using a debit card. Clear? Please remember, when you're using a debit card, you are using your own money which is kept in the bank, which is deposited in your bank account. On the other hand, when you're using a credit card, you are not using your money. You are using the bank's money. It is a kind of a loan that you're using. Clear? So when you pay by a credit card, always remember that it is not your money, it is the bank's money that you are using, and you will have to return this amount along with interest back to the bank. Clear? So this is the basic difference between debit card and credit card, and this is how it looks over here. Both the cards, look the same actually. Clear? You have got a certain kind of an electronic chip over here. Clear? This particular chip these days, and then the card number is mentioned over here. It is 16 digit normally that is seen. Clear? 16 digit card number, and then you have got the expiry date of the card. Clear? You have got the card holder's name written over here below. Clear? And at the back of the card you can see a 3-digit code. This is the
secret code which is called as the CVV. Clear? It is a very secret code which is used to make transactions by using by using it online. Clear? To make various payments. So this is how a card looks like, and this is this black color you can see over here. This is the magnetic strip. This is the magnetic strip which is used for in the swipe machines and also in the ATMs. Clear? So this is how it looks, the debit card and the credit card. Clear? And the major difference between them is that debit card is your money, credit card is the bank's money. Clear? Now coming to the next topic, the loan activities of banks. Now see over here, talking about a bank, what are the major functions of a bank? The major functions of a bank are to accept deposits and then to extend the loans. Isn't it clear? Now look at this particular diagram over here, this picture. This financial intermediary, which is a bank in this case, clear? Now in the bank is accepting the deposits. You can see over here, isn't it? The bank is accepting the deposits, and then out of those deposits, the bank is advancing the loans to persons who require it. Clear? So when the banks are advancing the loans to the persons who require them, banks will charge interest from them. Isn't it clear? So interest has to be paid by this borrower to the bank. Now in this case, this particular depositor is depositing money in the bank, and in return of that, the bank is paying interest to the customer, to the depositor. One basic difference over here, when banks are extending the loans to this person, to the borrower, clear, the bank is charging interest from this person, clear, and on the other hand, the bank has to pay the interest to this depositor, clear. However, the interest that is received by the bank from the borrower, from this person, let's say this is person A, Mr. A, and this is Mrs. B, clear. Now whatever interest is charged by the bank from person A, it is higher, clear. It is a higher rate of interest, and whatever interest is paid to the depositor, it is a lower rate of interest, clear. Like for example, if I say the interest charged by the bank is 12%, the interest paid by the bank is 6%, clear. And whatever is the difference between these two, that is the main, you can say, profit of the bank, clear. Let me explain to you once again in different context. See, like Mrs. B, we have got so many customers, so many depositors depositing money in the bank, clear. So the bank has got lots of money from all the deposits that they have received from many depositors like Mrs. B, clear. But we also have got few people who want to take loans from the bank, clear. So the bank will also extend loans to few persons like Mr. A who require them, and the banks will charge them interest in return for those loans, clear, and also charge the interest at a higher rate as compared to what they are paying to the depositors, clear. So this is the basic you can say function of the bank, and whatever is the difference between the interest that is received and the interest that is paid, the difference between these two is the, you can say, profit of the bank, or we can say income of the banks. So this is how the banks are functioning, clear, and how the banks are accepting the deposits and extending the loans, clear. Now moving ahead, we have got a question over here. What do you think would happen if all the depositors went to ask for their money at the same time? Clear. Now imagine, like, with if you look at the previous slide, we have seen like many depositors have deposited money in their bank accounts, clear, and also they have the right to withdraw it whenever they want it, clear. But just imagine a situation when all the depositors come to the bank at the same time to withdraw their money, to withdraw all their money rather, I would say, clear. So in that case, what will happen? See, first of all, let's look at the answer which I have written for you, and then I'll explain it to you, clear. See,
If all the depositors went to ask for their money at the same time, then the bank would run out of money. That is very natural, isn't it? Because the banks don't always, don't keep your money always with them. They also extend it in the form of loans to the other customers, isn't it? Now just imagine all of a sudden all the customers come to the bank at the same time and demanding all their deposits that they have deposited. Do you think the bank will be able to give the money back to them? Of course not. Why? Because the bank has already extended some amount of money in the form of loans to other customers. Now, in this case, what will happen? The banks will run out of money. They will run short. They will run out of cash. Clear? There would be shortage of cash with the bank. Clear? But in reality, this does not happen. It can happen in very rare cases, or we can say in the rarest of the rare cases, when there are rumors of banks becoming bankrupt or sometimes during wars. Clear? So during these times, we have witnessed, that a lot of people withdraw the money from the banks. But there has never been a situation when all the customers go to the bank at the same time to withdraw all their money. Clear? This has not happened any time. Clear? But if it happened, clear, the banks would simply run out of cash and they would not be able to give the customers whatever money they have in their bank accounts. Now see, we'll be looking at two different credit situations over here, clear, and then we'll be discussing on these two situations. Clear? This is a very, very important topic. This is a very, very important topic. This is there in the NCERT book. Clear? So see, first of all, the first situation over here that we have over here is the first credit situation, festival season. See over here, it is festival season 2 months from now, and the shoe manufacturer Salim is the shoe manufacturer, has received an order from a large trader in town for 3,000 pairs of shoes. Clear? So festival is going to come 2 months from now, and a particular shoe manufacturer whose name is Salim, he has received a very big order, a very huge order from a very big trader in town for 3,000 pairs of shoes. Clear? And it has to be delivered within 1 month, in a month's time. Now to complete this huge demand that he has, the huge order that he has got, to complete production on time, Salim has to hire a few more workers because usually he does not work with so many workers. Clear? So during this order, he has to hire few more workers for stitching and for the pasting work. He has to purchase the raw materials as well. Now to meet these expenses, what does Salim do? He obtains loans from two sources. Clear? First, he asks the leather supplier to supply leather now and promises to pay him later. Clear? So to meet these expenses right now, what does Salim do? He relies on two sources of loans. Clear? First, what he does, he asks his leather supplier to supply the leather now and he promises to pay him later. Clear? So he has got over here leather, you can say in credit without paying the amount. Clear? Second, he obtains loan in cash from the large trader as advance payment for 1,000 pairs of shoes. Now the trader who has ordered him 3,000 pairs of shoes, Salim asks him for the payment of 1,000 pairs of shoes as advance payment. Clear? With a promise to deliver the whole order by the end of the month. And at the end of the month, Salim is able to deliver the goods. Clear? He makes a very good profit and also repays the money that he had borrowed. Clear? So we can see in this particular case how Salim is managing, managing the loan, clear, that he requires, and how he is working out and how he works out so that he is able to make a profit and also repay the money that he had borrowed. Clear? So this is the first credit situation that we have seen on this slide. Now on this particular slide we have got a second story titled as Swapna's problem. Now see over here, Swapna, a small farmer, grows groundnut on her 3 acres of land. Clear? So she is growing groundnut on 3 acres of land that she has got. Clear? She takes a loan from the money lender to meet the expenses of cultivation, hoping that her harvest would help repay the loan. Clear? Now what does Swapna do? She takes loan from the local money lender for what? For the cultivation expenses, hoping that when she harvests these crops, she will get a good amount of money. She'll make a good profit, and then she will repay the amount of loan which she had taken from the local money lender. Now let's see what happens. Midway through the season, the crop is hit by pests and the crop fails. Clear? So in this way the crop has failed, and whatever Swapna had thought did not happen. Clear? Though Swapna sprays her crops with expensive pesticides, it makes little difference. So despite spraying those crops with pesticides and all, still it makes no difference. Clear? She is unable to repay the money lender, and the debt grows over the year into a large amount because interest have already accrued on it. Clear? So the interest keeps on accruing and the loan amount keeps on growing. Clear? So it becomes into a large amount. Next year, Swapna takes a fresh loan for cultivation. It is a normal crop this year. Clear? So next year again Swapna is taking a loan for the cultivation. However, this year things are fine, and it is a normal crop this year. Clear? But the earnings are not enough to cover the old loan, but remember, because she had already taken a loan from the local money lender. Clear? But however, she has not earned enough to repay the old loan as well. She is caught in a debt. Clear? She has to sell a part of the land to pay off the debt. Clear? Now this is a second case of the credit situation. So in the first case, what we have seen how Salim utilizes the loan amount and makes a huge profit. In the second case, we can see how Swapna's Swapna's loan amount did not help her to make profits. Instead, she became overburdened with the loan amount. Clear? At last, what she had to do? She had to sell off her land, a part of her land, to repay the debt. Now, these are the two credit situations we have seen. Clear? Now, we'll be talking about these two situations in the coming slides. Now, first of all, we have to understand that in the Swapna's case, she is caught in a debt trap. Clear? She is caught in a debt trap. And what is a debt trap? Please have a look over here. Debt trap is a situation where the debtor will not be able to repay the debt incurred. Swapna had taken a loan from the money lender. Clear? And she was not able to repay him because the crops had failed. Next year she had taken a new loan for the cultivation. However, the earnings were not sufficient. So at last she had to sell off her part of her land to repay the loan. Clear? And she is caught in a debt trap. Now, what is a debt trap? This is a very, very important question. Please mark it important and try to understand and learn it as well. Clear? It is a situation where the debtor means, looking at the last example, Swapna is a debtor. Clear? Where the debtor will not be able to repay the debt incurred. So whatever loans she had taken, she is not able to repay. Clear? Debt trap situation may arise due to the higher interest rates or change in terms and conditions of the debt incurred. Clear? So when does it happen? You can say because it can happen because of various reasons. Clear? Few of them are like because of the high interest rates, or there may be a change in the terms and conditions of the debt incurred, or it also may be, as in the case of Swapna, that things did not turn out that good. Clear? Things did not turn out that good. Clear? Her crop spoiled, and that is how she suffered huge loss. Clear? Last point,
normally debt trap will result in default of payments or bankruptcies. So over here, what is happening? People are caught in a, you can say, in a trap whereby they will have to, think of other possible means to repay the amount that they had taken as loan from the you can say from the banks or from the money lenders, from the persons who had given them the amount of money. Clear? Sometimes they will also default in the payments. If they are not able to make the payments, they will be declared as bankrupt by the courts, isn't it? So it is a very bad situation when you are caught in a kind of a trap. You cannot escape from there. Clear? So this is known as the debt trap. Clear? So please try to learn the answer, understand it as well. It is very, very important for your exam. Clear? Moving ahead. Now we'll be looking at the terms of credit. Now what does terms of credit mean? Like for example, if you go to the bank, clear, or if you go to a money lender to take a loan, clear. So the loan will be given to you on what terms? On what terms and conditions? That is called as terms of credit. Clear? So let's look at these terms of credit one by one. The first is tenure of loan. Like let's say for example, if I am going to take a loan from a bank, clear? Let's give you example. If I go to a bank to take a loan, clear? Now first of all, in the terms of credit, the tenure of loan will be mentioned. Like for example, if I take a loan for let's say 5 years, clear? So now 5 years is the tenure of the loan. Clear? The next term of credit is interest rate. Now the bank is going to give me let's say rupees 1 lakh as loan for 5 years at what rate of interest? So rate of interest, let's say, is 12% per annum. Clear? So interest rate also has to be in the terms of credit. Clear? Next is collateral. Collateral means security. What security is going to be deposited for the loan amount? For example, if I go to take a loan amount of rupees 1 lakh, the bank will say that you will have to deposit certain collaterals with us, certain securities with us. Okay, so what I will do, if I have got certain gold jewelry, I will deposit the gold as the collateral, as the security. Clear? Next is documentation. Clear? So all the terms of credit like tenure of loan, the interest rate, the collateral, clear? Everything will be written on proper papers. Clear? The proper documentation will be done. That is called as the documentation, or we can simply say the paperwork. Clear? Paperwork means the documentation. And last is mode of repayment. Clear? Now if I take rupees 1 lakh from the bank, now how will I have to repay the amount? Will I have to repay it every month in certain installments, or will I have to pay it let's say after 5 years with the interest amount? Clear? So whatever is the mode of repayment, that also has to be mentioned in the documentation, in the paperwork. Clear? So these are the terms of credit. Clear? Again, this is very, very important for your exams. Moving ahead, next question is, we have seen that in the terms of credit, the lenders ask for collateral while lending. Clear? Now remember one thing, that whenever you try to get a loan from the bank, you will have to deposit certain security or certain collateral. Now why do you think the lenders ask for this collateral when you want to get a loan? What could be the reasons for it? Clear? As you can see over here, you want certain amount of money as loan. Clear? What does the bank say? That you have to deposit certain security. Clear? Or certain collateral. So this is the security and this is the loan amount. So this is how it works. Clear? So why do you think they ask for the collateral? The very simple reason, the simple logic is that if in case in future, if you are not able to repay the amount of loan that you had taken, then the banks will, you can say, sell your security, your collateral, and then get the amount from there. That is why they ask for the collateral. Clear? Let's see over here. See, collateral is an asset that the borrower owns, such as land, building, vehicle, livestock, deposits, jewelry, and so many things. Clear? It is asked by the lender for following purposes. So why do the lender ask for the collateral? For the following purposes. And what are these? First is as a guarantee to the lender until the loan is repaid. Clear? So it's going to be, it acts like a guarantee that if I don't pay, you may sell it. Clear? And the second is in case of default, that is when the borrower is unable to repay the loan, the lender can sell it or use it to recover the loan that has been extended. Clear? So it is used as a security that if the person who has taken the loan is not paying me back, in that case I can sell his security and then get the amount which I had given him. So this is the main purpose of a collateral, or we can say the purpose of security. Clear? Now on this slide we have got the next topic, that is types of loans. Now see, types of loans can be differentiated into two parts. Clear? Into two types we can say, the formal sector loans and the informal sector loans. Clear? Now see, when we talk about the formal sector loans, the loans that we take from the banks, from the cooperatives, clear, is called as the formal sector loans. Why? Because they are regulated by the government. Clear? The terms and conditions are clearly defined. On the other hand, talking about the informal sector loans, over here the terms of credit may not be properly defined, the interest rates may be very high. Clear? And the informal sector loans are not regulated by the government or by the Reserve Bank of India. They are unregulated. Clear? So we'll be looking at these two types of loans in detail. Next is, why do you think cheap and affordable credit is crucial for the country's development? Clear? Why is cheap credit as well as affordable credit crucial? Means what? Important for the development of the country. Think for a moment. Why do you think cheap credit is important? Cheap credit means what? To get the loans at a very low interest rate. Clear? So what could be the answer for it? More lending would lead to higher incomes and also encourage people to invest in agriculture, engage in businesses and set up small industries. Clear? So this is the first point to this question. Second is, cheap credit will enable more investment. Why so? Because if you are getting you can say the credit at a reasonable rate, at a cheap rate, you will be taking the loans and then you will be investing it. Like for example, if you are getting a loan at a very high rate of, let's say, 30%, clear? Do you think it will encourage you to take a loan? Of course not. You will not take a loan because the interest rate is very high, and therefore there is going to be less investment in the market, in the country. However, if the credit rate is very less, let's say for example it is around 10%. Now 10% interest rate is a very reasonable amount of interest rate. Clear? So if the interest rate is less, what will you do? You will take loans, and after taking loans you will invest in different you can say different sectors. Clear? So this will lead to more investment, and also this leads to the acceleration of economic activity in the country. There's going to be a lot of economic activity in the country. Clear? Next point is, cheap credit would also allow weaker sections of society to access the formal sector of lending and get rid of from informal money lenders. Clear? So when we get cheap credit, clear, so all the weaker sections of society, clear, it will also offer them a chance to get the cheap credit from the formal sector, that is from the banks and from the cooperatives, so that they can be saved from the, you can say the very high interest rates which they have to pay if in case they get loans from the local money lenders. Clear? And if the poor people, if the weaker sections of society, if they get the cheap loans, it is of course going to be very useful to them. How? They can use it in the best possible manner. They can invest, start a small business. Clear? And definitely it's going to be very fruitful to them. Clear? Next point,
affordable credit would also end the cycle of debt trap. Clear? Like what we had seen in the case of in the previous example where we had seen, clear, that the lady had taken a loan from the money lender, and when you take a loan from money lender, the rates of interest are usually very high, clear, and then to repay that amount of money, you take a separate loan. Again, if not able to pay from that loan as well, you sell off a part of your property, clear. So this is called as a debt trap, clear. But if you get loans at a very reasonable rate, at a very cheap rate, clear, then it will also end the cycle of debt trap. Clear? So affordable credit would also end the cycle of debt trap, and this is a very important point over here. Clear? The last point over here, cheap and easy terms of credit would inspire better investment in technology and thus increase competition. So when people get cheap credit in the market, clear? So what is going to happen? It is going to inspire better investment in technology, isn't it? People are going to invest in technology, and there's going to be increase in the competition. And when there is increase in the competition, what will happen? The people of the country are going to get the things at a very reasonable price. Why so? Because there is a lot of competition in the market. You have got many, you can say, players producing the same product, or the offering the same kind of services. So when you have, for example, many players in the market offering the same kind of service, of course there's going to be competition in the market. The person or the company offering at a very reasonable rate, they are the ones going to benefit the most. Clear? So ultimately, even the other players will have to lower their prices. Clear? So again, this is a very important question. Clear? So please try to understand this as well and learn it. It is important for your exams. Now see, look at this particular graph. It is very, very important. You can, conclude so many things from this particular graph. Please have a look over here. See, of all the loans taken by the urban households, what percentage was formal and what percentage was informal? Clear? Now see, this particular graph is showing very important, information. See over here. This is the poor households. These are the households with few assets. These are well-off households, and these are the rich households. Clear? In the blue, you have got the percent of loans from the informal sector, and the purple shows the percent of loans from the formal sector. Now see, if you look at the first, the pie chart, clear, referring to the poor households, 85% of the loans by the poor households is taken from the informal sector. The blue color depicts the informal sector. Clear? So the poor people, majority of them are taking loans from the informal sector, and only 15% is taking loans from the formal sector. It means from the banks and from the cooperatives. And as the economic status improves, clear, like over here, households with few assets, 53% of people are taking loans from the informal sector and 47% from the formal sector. Again, the well-off households over there, 28% are taking from the informal sector. So we can see that the percentage of people taking loans from the informal sector is decreasing as they are getting economically well off. Clear? So over here, the well-off households, 28% are taking from the informal sector and majority are taking from the formal sector. Clear? Now looking at the last pie chart over here, concerning the rich households, only 10% are taking loans from the informal sector, and majority of them, that is 90% of them, are taking loans from the formal sector. So what we see over here, that majority of the poor people, clear, they rely on the informal sector credit, that is from the local money lenders, local traders, all these people. Clear? And majority of the rich take loans from the formal sector, that is from the banks and from the cooperatives. Now think, why do you think the poor take loans from the informal sector and the rich from the formal sector? What could be the probable reason for it? Think of it. See, the very basic difference is that when you go to a bank, clear? When you go to a bank to take a loan, before the bank sanctions you a loan or gives you a loan, the bank will require, you can say, many paper formalities to be done. Clear? Where the borrower has to, like for example, submit the income tax returns. Clear? Then the PAN card, you can say the PAN card photocopy has to be deposited. Clear? Then certain kind of collateral has to be deposited with the bank, some kind of a security. Clear? So there are a lot of formalities to, to get a loan from the banks, and the poor people are not in a condition to get loans from the banks because they may not be having all the documents with them. Clear? And moreover, they are so poor that they are not even able to deposit some property as the security with the banks. So therefore they are not in a condition to take the loans from the banks, in other words from the formal sector. So the next way out is what? The next way out is to get loans from the informal sector. Now what happens in the informal sector? They will charge you high rate of interest. Clear? If you are not able to repay the amount of loans, then they will resort to illegal means. They will resort to illegal means of recovery, like for example issuing threats, including death threats. Clear? So all these things are happening in the informal sector credit. Clear? So what we can see from this particular chart over here, that the maximum poor people rely on the informal credit sources. Clear? And the rich rely on the formal credit sources. Clear? I would request all the students to think of the reasons why poor resort to the informal sector lending, informal sector credit, and the rich to the formal sector credit. Clear? Prepare an answer for this. That's your task. Now see, on this slide we'll be looking at differences between the formal and the informal sources of credit. Now see, we have got formal sources over here and the informal sources on the right side. Clear? Now let's look at the differences between the formal sector and the informal sector, informal sources of credit. Clear? The first is, under the formal source, they are registered by the government. Clear? Informal sources, they are not registered, they are unregistered. Clear? Next, they are regulated by the Reserve Bank of India. They are not regulated, or we can say they are unregulated by the RBI. Clear? They charge lower rates of interest. Over here they charge very high interest rates. Their main motive is social welfare. Their main motive is profit making. Examples over here are banks and cooperatives. Over here are local money lenders, traders, etc. Again, this is a very important comparison, you can say, table. So please learn this as well. Important for your exams too. Clear? Moving ahead, why should credit at reasonable rates be available for all? Why do you think cheap or reasonable credit rates should be available for all? Clear? See over here. Credit at reasonable rates should be available for all because of the following reasons. Number one, it helps the people to repay their loan without facing any challenges or other hardships. Clear? If the loans are, if the loans are expensive, in other words, if the interest rates are very high, the people will have to face a lot of hardships to repay the amount of loan. Clear? Maybe they will have to sell off their property. Maybe they will have to take a second loan to satisfy the first loan. Clear? So they will have to face hardships. But if the credit rate is reasonable, then they will not be facing any kind of a hardship. Next reason is also the people can use the loan amount for their needs and thus help them in improving their life. Like for example, if a person is taking a loan to start a small business, clear? Now if the loan is a cheap loan, clear, getting at a very reasonable interest rate, so in that case the person will be taking the amount of loan, starting the business, earning the profits, and then repaying the amount of loan as well. Clear? So it is going to improve his or her life. It's going to be very useful for them. But on the other hand, if the interest rates were very high, so do you think he would be able to repay the amount of loan after starting the business? Of course not. Clear? So therefore, reasonable, you can say cheap credit, or you can say credit at reasonable rates is very, very important. Clear? Third point over here, the poor who suffer the most because of very high interest rates from the informal sources can be protected. Clear? Because we have seen in the previous chart that maximum poor people take loan from the informal sources. Clear? And these are the ones who are charged very high interest rates. So to protect them, reasonable rates of credit have to be offered to everybody. Moving ahead, next question over here we have got, should there be a supervisor such as the Reserve Bank of India that looks into the loan activities of the informal lenders? Why would its task be quite difficult? So you have got two parts in this question. Clear? The first part is asking that should there be a supervisor such as the RBI to look into the loan activities of the informal lenders, and the next part is why would its task be quite difficult? So the entire answer is there on this page, a reference answer. The first point, like the formal lenders who are regulated by the RBI, like the banks, the cooperatives, they are regulated by the government, by the RBI. Clear? There should be a mechanism to regulate the informal lenders as well. Next point, in this way, their lending activities can be checked, and also if they charge exorbitant interest rates, exorbitant means very high. Clear? If they charge very high interest rates, their licenses can be cancelled. Clear? However, this is quite a difficult task because informal sector comprises of many people who run different kinds of businesses besides lending, and moreover, many of them are not registered by the government. So it would be very difficult for the government to regulate these businesses, regulate these kind of people who are dealing in the loan activities, in the credit activities. Clear? It is very much required, no doubt, but in reality it is going to be very difficult because we cannot trace all the lenders who are giving out these kind of loans to the people. Clear? Because in every you can say locality we are having few traders, we are having the in the villages the kind of people who have got lot of land with them. Clear? They are the ones who extend the loans to the poor farmers. Clear? The traders extend the loans to the people who come to them for loans. Clear? So they cannot be traced. We have got so many of them in the in different you can say areas. Clear? So this is the you can say a reference answer to this question. You can have a different answer as well. However, the main points need to be the same. Clear? Now coming to the next topic of self-help groups for the poor. Now see, first of all, what is the meaning of self-help group? In short, we refer it to as the SHG. Clear? SHG. Now see, if you understand this topic right now, you will never forget in your lifetime. See over here, like we have seen that the poor people who want to take loan, they don't have the proper documents with them, so they cannot go to the banks.
to get the loans. Clear? So banks is not the option for them. Next option for them is the informal sector. Clear? The money lenders, the traders. Clear? But if they go to them, what is the problem? Very high interest rates. Isn't it? Very high interest rates. So self-help groups, SHGs, are an alternative to this. Clear? Or we can say it is a solution for the poor people. Now what happens in the self-help groups? Usually the women in the rural areas, clear, they come together and they form a self-help group. Clear? Normally they are between 15 to 20 members in a SHG. Clear? Now what they do, all of them, they form a pool of money. Clear? Like for example, let's say there are 20 members in one SHG. Clear? Now all the 20 members will have to deposit a very small amount of money every month in this pool. Clear? Let's say all of them are required to deposit only rupees 500 in a month. Clear? So every month they are getting how much amount of money? 500 into 20, that is equal to 10,000 rupees. Clear? Now this 10,000 which has been collected every month, it is given to one of the members who require it. Clear? So every month the members come in, they meet, as you can see in this picture. Clear? They also maintain the accounts, or you can say they have got the books of account. Clear? They maintain it over there. Now these people, they all will give their share, that is rupees 500 in this case. Clear? And then one of them who require it, they will take the full amount, rupees 10,000. So in this way, what is happening? The people have thought of a solution to the problem that was being faced by the people because of the high interest rates. Clear? So in this case, what is happening? All the members, they are usually from the same neighborhood, so they know them very well. Clear? So they collect the money, give it to the person who requires it. Clear? Like for example, if someone is having some kind of someone's marriage is there, someone's daughters or son's marriage is there in the village, then they can take the loan. If there is some medical you can say requirement, then for that purpose as well they take the amount of loan. Clear? So in this way, every member takes the amount of loan, you can say in a serial manner. Clear? Like one month someone will take, the next month some other member will take. So this is how it is done. But every month how much they will have to give? Only rupees 500. So this is a very important you can say concept which is there in the villages, in the rural areas, where usually women, you can say, forms these kind of groups known as the self-help groups, and they help one another. Clear? Now look at this question over here. Look at a 10 rupee note. What is written on top? Can you explain this statement? Clear? Excuse me. So if you have got a 10 rupee note in your hand, you may please get it. Clear? Now see, I have got the picture over here. See, this is the 10 rupee note. Clear? This is the new 10 rupee note, and this is the old 10 rupee note that we have. Clear? This is the new one which is there in the market these days. Now see, any one of them, if you look at the top of the note, what is written over there? It is written over there, over here, if you see over here, guaranteed by the central government. Guaranteed by the central government. Now what does this guaranteed by the central government means? It means that this particular note, it is not just a mere piece of paper. Clear? It is a currency note which is having the face value of rupees 10. Clear? And this is guaranteed by the government of India, that is by the central government. Clear?
it is acting like a legal tender. And if you offer this, this currency note to anyone, they cannot refuse it. Clear? Like for example, let's say I have got this. Let's say I'll take this. Let's say I have got this pen in my hand over here. Clear? Let's say this pen is costing rupees 10. Clear? Now, if you will come to me and say that take rupees 10, give me this pen. Clear? If you will hand over the 10 rupee note to me, I will say no, I cannot accept this note. I don't believe in this note. Clear? Now, if I say so, clear, I'm going to go against the law of the country. I cannot deny to accept the 10 rupee note. Clear? Why so? Because it is a legal tender. It is guaranteed by the central government and I will have to accept it. Clear? So that is the meaning of that, guaranteed by the central government. Clear? So that's all about the 10 rupee note. Clear? So I have explained the entire topic in this chapter. Clear? The topic of demonetization, which is also there in this chapter, I have not covered in this video because I have already made a separate lecture, a separate video on demonetization. So those of you need to watch that. You can have a look. You can search the video of that I have previously uploaded. Clear? And if anyone is having any kind of a doubt, I once again repeat, if any one of you is having any kind of a doubt, clear, you can simply write to us on this email ID. Clear? That is cbseminds@gmail.com. Clear? On this particular email ID. Clear? And definitely I'm going to clear your doubts. If in case you think that things cannot be asked in the mail, you can simply leave your question if possible. Clear? And also leave your contact number so that we can contact you over phone and explain to you in details. So that's all, friends, for this topic. We'll be meeting you soon in the next lecture with a new topic. So till then, take care. Goodbye.